On the flip side, we've identified opportunities to enhance natural habitat in the Cockatoolie and upper Tallaric drainages that will more than offset these small footprint effects. In fact, we'll create more habitat in the immediate project area than we will affect. We'll be creating habitat equal or even better in quality. These type of fish habitat enhancement projects have been employed successfully by a number of sites in Alaska, including Fort Knox Mine near Fairbanks, at Potter's Marsh south of Anchorage, and other locations. And I believe you heard someone from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game talk about the thousands of opportunities that they saw for fisheries habitat enhancement through the state. Pebble's fisheries mitigation planning is based on extensive scientific investigation and is supported by more than 5 decades of case studies. Not only will we create more natural habitat in the immediate project area than we affect, but we've also identified thousands of additional acres of habitat investment opportunities in the Nushagak and Kvichak river drainages. The other key issues we will address are stream flows, water quality, and seismic risk and other issues. So, how is it possible to improve fish habitat in Southwest Alaska? Didn't the EPA conclude there were no opportunities for enhancement of fish habitat in the Bristol Bay watershed study area, which comprised the entirety of the Nushagak and Kvichak river drainages? This is an absolutely incredulous statement, I believe worthy of a Pulitzer Prize, unfortunately in fiction. In fact, we will use tried and true fisheries mitigation and habitat enhancement approaches, with the same ones that groups like Trout Unlimited have employed and promoted for years and are well publicized on their website, by removing natural barriers to fish movement like waterfalls and cataracts, or open up new habitat areas by reconnecting relic side channels and adding water to stream reaches that naturally go dry or freeze over. When it comes to stream flows, we're really very fortunate where Pebble is located, at the very upper reaches of 3 tributaries, where stream flows are low and habitat values are modest. We are blessed with abundant water, meaning we won't be dewatering any streams outside the mine perimeter. Working with the U.S. Geological Survey's water management modeling software, we have created a strategy that by releasing water surplus to our needs from the Pebble project that optimizes conditions for downstream habitat. The bottom line is that Pebble's surplus water release strategy will reduce downstream habitat effects to a non-detectable level. Our goal is that these 3 stream systems closest to Pebble will continue at the same level of production or better when the Pebble mine goes into operation. When it comes to maintaining downstream water quality, Pebble will employ state-of-the-art water treatment plant. It will employ 21st century engineering standards to ensure that the surface and groundwater outside the mine perimeter remains healthy and protective for fish. These are the same approaches that have been successfully employed at modern mines in Alaska for decades: Red Dog, Fort Knox, Greens Creek, and others. Alaska's mining industry has an extremely exemplary track record for maintaining water quality and fish habitat. Pebble will only build on this tradition of excellence. On the slide, what you see is a map locating the Gibraltar mine, which is operated by an associated company of HDI's, Seco Mines. It's located, I apologize for the metrics, that's about 4.5 miles from the Fraser River. The Fraser River is over 1,000 feet across at that point. There's millions, if not tens of millions, of returning salmon every August and early fall, and hundreds of millions, if not billions, of smolts that go down that river and return to the sea the following year. What you see on the right-hand side is the tailing structure in the background, and those are seepage ponds. And we grow rainbow trout in both the tailings and the seepage ponds, and those trout are good enough for human consumption. The water in those seepage ponds can be returned to the Fraser River without treatment. That's the nature of that particular copper porphyry project. Yet we test that water regularly. If it didn't already meet the standard for return, we would treat it before return. The same the same comes to managing for seismic risk and other extreme weather events. The engineering know-how exists and is being demonstrated in Alaska today to build mine facilities that can withstand large seismic events. Fort Knox mine near Fairbanks experienced a 7.9 magnitude earthquake on the Denali Fault about 10 years ago, and it performed exactly as designed. Pebble is being engineered to extremely conservative seismic design events. Not only do we have the technology and the means to design a mine to withstand seismic events or floods larger than anything that could actually occur, the regulatory agencies of Alaska and the United States will demand that we ensure that we do it right. So, why is Pebble a good project for Alaska? Well, recently we commissioned and released an economic impact study by IHS Global Insight. Pebble will provide nearly 3,000 high-wage jobs for generations of Alaskans, paying more than $100,000 a year in average salary for mine workers, double the state average. More than $1 billion in annual expenditures in-state. Pebble would boost the state's GDP by 3% and more than double the mining sector's contribution to state coffers and taxes, including significant contributions to the permanent fund, which may be timely given the declining oil production in the state. There are other potential benefits for Alaskans as well. Pebble will require approximately 500 megawatts of power to operate and could easily become a base load consumer to help address the South Central Alaska's pending energy shortage. Whatever the solution to Alaska's power needs, a project like Pebble can substantially reduce the impact of energy prices on Alaskan residents and businesses. Pebble could also help bring affordable energy to Southwest Alaskan communities, not only improving the cost of living and quality of life in local villages, but creating economic opportunities for development, enhancing the quality and, most importantly, the economic value of the Bristol Bay salmon fishery. Energy at a fraction of the current cost to fish processors should provide greatly enhanced margins for the fishers and the processors. In region, Pebble will literally transform the economy of Southwest Alaska by creating hundreds of high-wage, year-round jobs. Of the more than 5,000 working-age residents of Bristol Bay, less than 2/3 are employed, and only 1/3 have full-time jobs. As a result of lack of employment and the high cost of living, people are moving away. Schools are closing, villages are dying, and traditional cultures are at risk. Some of you may have seen John's speak earlier this morning in greater detail about these things, about these issues. Pebble will be a game changer for this region. Well-paid year-round jobs for every man and woman who wants employment and is willing to take advantage of training and workforce development programs that we offer. Supply and services contracts for Alaska Native corporations and local entrepreneurs. New economic infrastructure will provide affordable energy and lower-priced goods and services. Infrastructure that will even benefit the Bristol Bay salmon fishery. Increases in the Lake and Peninsula Borough taxation base by some 600% to $30 million per year, which will have knock-on effects, benefits for education, health, local infrastructure, and community services. Benefits for the nation, 15,000 American jobs, 2.7 billion in GDP contributions annually for decades into the future. Increase in U.S. domestic copper production, a critical element for U.S. construction, manufacturing, and electronics industries, by some 20% annually. So, why would major investors want to come into this project? Well, personally, I think the mining industry is looking at returning to the first world. A great deal of mining investment over the past 25 years has occurred in the developing world, in South America, Central America, nations in Africa, Indonesia, and Asia. Notwithstanding current market conditions, I believe we are on the cusp of a mining renaissance in North America. a range of issues have coalesced to make mineral exploration and development in third world countries much less attractive. Wage inflation. Alaska has stable wages, low inflation, and efficient and skilled labor. For comparable projects in South America and other third world jurisdictions, they would typically have 3 to 5 times as many workers who make wages on average somewhere between 50% and up to the same as they make in the US. But when you have 5 times as many workers, your unit labor costs are much higher than they are in the US. Water. In Chile in particular, where there's a dearth of water, and they increasingly need to rely on desalinated seawater for mineral processing, which is power intensive to both create and transmit, pumping from sea level up to 200, 300 kilometers inland and 2 to 3 kilometers in altitude. Alaska has a lot of water. We just need to be very judicious in the use and ensure that we protect it before we use it, while we use it, and after we use it. And if returning it to the natural environment, ensure that it meets all the regulatory standards for that purpose. Resource nationalism. Aside from the economic penalty a project has to face if you have a non-contributing state partner, how can such a state partner be a proper regulatory authority in terms of environmental issues and permitting? Worse is the trend today of resource nationalism post-development, but prior to companies achieving a return on capital. In Alaska and the United States, we enjoy the rule of law, robust environmental standards, permitting requirements, and an independent government. In my view, Alaska has a uniquely position to benefit from the next minerals commodity cycle. The seeds for this next great surge in mineral commodity prices and mining investment are being sown today. The world's largest miners are pulling back on large-scale capital projects, investments, and new expanded mines. At the same time, the world's largest mines are gradually becoming exhausted and confronting lower and lower grades. If you want to understand how dramatic this turn of events is, I'd suggest you read Paul Gate, who's a research analyst at Bernstein and formerly the minerals economist at Anglo. His research is both comprehensive and compelling. Alaska enjoys one of the greatest resource baskets in the world. A well-established and robust regulatory system that's clearly demonstrated how responsible mining can coexist with healthy fish and wildlife populations. You have a strong legal and democratic institutions. You have skilled and productive labor force. You have energy, water resources necessary for modern mining. It may be, however, that Pebble will ultimately be a litmus test when it comes to this investment. Pebble is a mineral resource of global and historic significance, a state asset situated on state land, as I said, specifically designated for resource development, being designed to the highest environmental standards in the world. If Pebble cannot be permitted or worse, is stopped before it's allowed to enter permitting, that will send a very negative message across the world. It's a message that will reverberate in corporate boardrooms around the world. Northern Dynasty accepts and even embraces Alaska's tough environmental laws and rigorous permitting requirements. Permitting a mine in America today is extremely onerous, one that requires years of study, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, broad-based public and political support, and dozens of permits. Some view this process as too long, too arduous, and one of weakness in the U.S. mining sector. I, for one, believe it's something that our industry should embrace. A strong regulatory framework should and will give the public at large the confidence that these developments will be built and operated in a responsible and beneficial manner. The people of Alaska and the United States should take pride and comfort in knowing that their governments have established one of the most clearly defined science and fact-based permitting processes in the world. Any project that meets tough state and federal environmental standards in places like Alaska is a project that has demonstrated its ability to operate safely. But high environmental standards and rigorous permitting requirements aren't the only competitive advantage if they don't come along with predictability and certainty for investors. Politicization of the permitting process is a very significant threat to the future of mining in the United States. We know that the U.S. is now tied for last place with Papua New Guinea in terms of the timeline it takes to permit a new mine. But the issue isn't environmental regulation or the permitting process itself. The real issue is the political activity funded by activists attempting to stop projects from entering permitting or challenging permits in court once they've been granted. Generally what I would refer to as the no industry. And this problem is evident in Alaska, where there's been a long history of activist organization, often based in the lower 48, trying to use Alaska's legislature, courts, and ballot boxes to delay and frustrate responsible resource developments. Even before entering permitting, the Pebble project has faced a litany of regulatory, political, policy, and legal challenges, all designed to stop us from receiving a full and fair hearing under the National Environmental Policy Act. The latest of these, the Bristol Bay Watershed Assessment, and the EPA's stated view that they could actually veto the project even before it had applied for a permit. The Pebble Partnership, with the assistance of the Resource Development Council, Alaska's mining industry, our native partners, and many in the legislative branches, and many of you out there have been able to defend our projects against these risks, and obviously our lawyers as well. Our successes to date are a reflection of the strength of the rule of law in this country and on the conviction of pro-resource development Alaskans. But it's going to take many more years of standing up to those who would abuse Alaska's legal system, its political system, and its democratic system to get Pebble over the finish line. We've got quite a while before Pebble goes through permitting and gets into development. But I hope I can count on your support to help us win that battle, particularly once we've clearly demonstrated the science behind our conviction that Pebble can coexist with the fisheries resources of Bristol Bay. During this week, I was recently reminded that the development of the Prudhoe Bay was a long, bitter, and hard-fought battle in this state, and I suspect some of you in the audience today were part of that battle. If not for the vision and perseverance and conviction of you, Alaska's business and political leaders, the state, its economy, and its people would simply not be where you are today. I'm going to be so bold as to say that the battle over Pebble and the effect it will have on Alaska's mining industry could present the same situation. But the opportunity to be at the leading edge of this and overcome that and make this truly a win-win situation is at hand for all of us. To be successful, we need your help. We need the business leaders. We need the elected leaders. We need the native leaders and everyday Alaskans to stand up for responsible resource development against the politicization of permitting and other regulatory processes. Certainly the things that the state can do and have said that they will do to help us attract the next investor for the development of the Pebble project. There are things the business community and native community can do as well. Provide clear signal to the international business community that Alaska is open to investment in responsible resource development. Which reminds me there's a couple of important ballot measures coming up in 2014. But as much as anything, we must speak out against the abuses of the U.S. legal and democratic process, against excesses of rhetoric and deliberate fear-mongering, against those who would finance and run campaigns that frustrate responsible resource development in this state at the expense of all of its citizens, but particularly rural Alaskans. The future of mining investment in mineral development in Alaska may hang in the balance. I said at the outset of my presentation that I would address the question in everybody's mind, what's next for Pebble? Now under Northern Dynasty's sole ownership. The answer is relatively straightforward. As you know, prior to Anglo's decision to withdraw, Pebble had announced its intention to initiate federal and state permitting by the end of this year. So our engineering work and environmental science and regulatory planning has advanced to a very high degree of completion, and we are in fact almost ready to enter permitting. On Anglo's announcement of their intention to withdraw, we had to stop the finalization of that process and move to restructuring the partnership. That is virtually complete, and we will now return to completing the 10% of the permitting documentation that was left. That should be completed in early 2014. We're also in the process of consolidating all of the Pebble Partnership's $600 million plus worth of data into a data room with a goal of attracting and qualifying a major partner. Our immediate priority will select the best possible partner for Pebble, the best possible investor for Alaska, as I said before. John Shively, as well as the state's politicians, business, and Native leadership, all have a critical role to play in that selection process. However, until the process of selecting the right partner for this project and the right investor for Alaska is more advanced, we won't be making a decision on the timing for entering permitting, but we will be ready. Now, I'd like to make one more point, which I think is an important point before I wind up, and that is when Northern Dynasty brought Anglo-American into the partnership and established the Pebble Partnership back in 2007, many people thought we'd sold 50% of the partnership to Anglo. The truth is we'd given Anglo-American the right to earn a 50% interest in the Pebble Partnership by investing $1.5 billion, money that was to be invested right here in Alaska. Through the fall of this year, Anglo's invested almost $600 million, and that investment has advanced the Pebble project tremendously to the point today that we're poised to enter permitting with a project that is demonstrably that will demonstrate it can coexist with the fisheries resources of Bristol Bay. But Anglo's $600 million investment and the $180 million that Northern Dynasty invested before that, before they arrived, has also been invested in Alaska. Over the past 5 years, we've employed more than 650 people in the state as employees and as contractors. The vast majority of them Alaskans, and significant proportions are local people from Southwest Alaska, people for whom jobs are scarce and the opportunity to earn a decent living to support their family and remain in the village is a rare commodity. I mention this to you now just to reinforce the point that Northern Dynasty is not seeking to put investors' dollars into our own pockets. We are seeking a partner, the right partner, to help us advance this project into permitting, construction, and operations. We are seeking an investor in Alaska, in her people, in her communities, in her economy, and the future of the state's mining industry. And I'm asking you for support for that today. Thank you.